Welcome to the quilt reveal for the Block of the Month 2022. You can find the final instructions in the Files section of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends, or you can screenshot it and print it at home, or push pause and take notes. But for now, it's time to cut. From the background fabric, cut 3 strips that are 3.5 inches by the width of fabric. You will also need 7 strips that are 2.5 inches by the width of fabric. At the end of the video, you will see all 3 color versions that I've been working on this year: the batik version, the red, white, and blue version, and the black background with the bright colors. But for now, we're just going to work on the batik version. Set aside all but one of each size strip that you just cut. From each of those last 2 strips, one that's 2.5 inches wide and one that's 3.5 inches wide, you will cut 2 rectangles that are 16.5 inches long. Now it's time to piece it all together. Make sure to use 1/4 inch seam allowances. Piece the 3.5 inch by 16.5 inch rectangles between the last 3 blocks. Press towards the sashing fabric. Piece the 2.5 inch by 16.5 inch rectangles onto opposite ends of this block row. Press towards the sashing fabric. Each of your sections of blocks should measure 58.5 inches wide. Make adjustments as necessary. Piece the remaining 2.5 inch strips end to end to cut 3 rectangles that measure 2.5 inches by 58.5 inches. Piece 2 of the rectangles between the 3 sections and press towards the sashing fabric. Piece the remaining 2.5 inch rectangle to the bottom of the unit and press towards the rectangle. Piece the 3.5 inch wide strips end to end and cut to the length of 58.5 inches. Make sure to pin each of the sections together before you sew them to prevent stretching. I don't pin often, but in this case, pinning is your friend. Piece the 3.5 inch strip to the top of the quilt top and press towards the rectangle. Now it's time to add the borders and the corners. Piece the corners to the top and bottom border sections. These are the shorter units. They should look exactly alike and follow the diagonal setting in the corners. Add the side borders first, then you will press towards the center of the quilt. When you add the top and bottom border sections to the quilt top, make sure you have the diagonal lines in the corners going the correct direction. Press towards the center of the quilt. And there it is, our quilt top is done. The block of the month for 2022 is finished. I also have my red, white, and blue version finished. I think it turned out fantastic, but I have to say that I think my favorite one of all 3 that I made was my bright fabrics on a black background version. I think this is just stunning. When you make 3 quilt tops, you also have to quilt 3 quilt tops. So I decided to quilt each of these a little bit differently. So for the batik one, I decided just to do an all-over pattern. I chose the stipple pattern, so it kind of looks like little puzzle pieces sort of in the background. And it was just a simple way to get this one done. And I used a lighter color thread, so that will show up on some of the darker fabrics, but it blends in really well with the background fabric. For the red, white, and blue version, I did a smaller stipple in the background where all the white is, and then on each block I quilted it a little bit differently depending on the block. I used white thread on the background, and then I used a variegated red, white, and blue thread on all the other areas of the quilt top. I really just played around and had fun trying to make each section a little different than the other sections. For those months where we had 2 or 3 blocks that matched, I would quilt them the same way so there would be a little continuity between the blocks. All of the quilting on the red, white, and blue quilt was freehand quilting. It wasn't computer generated. It was just whatever I thought the block was telling me how it wanted to be quilted. After doing the specialty quilting on this red, white, and blue one, and then just doing a plain stipple all over stitch on the batik one, I had to make a decision on how I wanted to quilt the version that had the black background and the bright colors. For this one, I decided to use one of the computer-generated designs on my quilting machine. This one, I call it crossed lines, and it's just lines that cross each other over and over again. And I used a variegated thread with kind of muted bright colors. I am so happy that I just used a simple design on this one. I think that the bold colors really shine through with that kind of simple quilting to show it off. I hope you've enjoyed our block of the month from the Quilted Forest for 2022. I've really enjoyed putting these videos together for you to have a fun project to work on for the entire year. Please leave a comment below and let us know which one of these quilts was your favorite. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe. We're planning another block of the month for 2023, and we'd sure love it if you'd participate. We'll also continue our Celebrating the States block of the month through the year 2026. As always, thanks for watching and happy quilting.